Hello and welcome. Tonight, Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 elections, Peter Obi, criticizes number of Nigeria's delegates at the UN climate conference in Dubai, describing it as a waste of resources, even as the federal government says it is not responsible for all the country's delegates. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar says he is not a beneficiary of the federal government reinstatement of Integrated Logistics Services Nigeria Limited boat pilotage monitoring business, having sold his shares in the company since 2021. Julius Berger Construction Company formally hands over the second Niger Bridge to the federal government as Minister of Works says the bridge is open to concessioning. And one person killed and two others injured after a knife and hammer attack on the streets in central Paris. We begin tonight with a controversy surrounding a number of delegates from Nigeria attending the UN climate conference in Dubai. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 presidential polls, Mr. Peter Obi, says the 1,411 delegates from Nigeria is a waste of scarce resources. Nigeria and China have the third highest number of delegates after the host country, UAE, which has 4,409 delegates, and Brazil with 3,081 delegates. In a statement on his verified X account on Sunday, Mr. Peter Obi said, in a twist of sad irony, "Let me congratulate the giant of Africa, Nigeria, for matching the great China with the same number of contingents at COP28 in Dubai." While China's budget for 2024 is about $4 trillion, Nigeria's budget is about $33 billion. Most importantly, the vast majority of those in the Nigerian delegation are either non-relevant civil servants or relations, friends, and hangers-on of high government officials. Mr. Peter Obi queried the rationale behind the huge contingents attending that summit at public expense, when, according to him, most of them hardly understand or have anything to do with climate change, even as most Nigerians can hardly afford food and basic needs. The former Anambra State governor says he hopes a day will come when Nigeria can focus on competing with China on productivity and the miracle of migrating the highest number of citizens out of poverty. Meanwhile, the presidency today said that only a handful of the 1,411 Nigerian delegates who registered to attend the COP28 climate summit in Dubai are sponsored by the federal government. A statement by the presidential aide, Temitope Ajayi, says a bulk of this contingent comprised private sector players, civil society organizations, delegates from Nigeria's oil-producing Niger Delta region, and journalists. The statement reads in part, "It is important to state that delegates from all countries, whether from government, private sector, media, and civil society groups, attend COP summits and conferences as parties, and a number of attendees are registered against their countries of origin. And this does not mean that they are sponsored or funded by the government." The statement goes on to say that because of the significance of the climate conference, stakeholders from Nigeria and beyond the government are also involved in this. According to him, private sector players from Nigeria attended the conference include UBA chairman Tony Elumelu, the chairman of Boa Group Abdul Samad Rabiu, and other billionaires whose businesses are promoting sustainability and climate actions through their philanthropic activities. He also says that these businessmen and women and their staff who are in Dubai to promote their own business interests are part of the 1,411 delegates from Nigeria, and their trip to Dubai is not funded by the federal government. Meanwhile, the former vice president and the PDP presidential candidate in the last general elections, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, has denied having any links with Integrated Logistics Services Nigeria Limited, Intels. Mr. Abubakar, in a message on his verified Facebook account, said that he sold his shares in Intel in January 2021 to Orlean Investment Group, the parent body of the company, and has not rescinded his decision. According to Mr. Abubakar, there is no way that he is going to benefit from the federal government's reinstatement of that business of Intel in the country. Mr. Atiku said, quote, "The insinuation that I am a beneficiary of the decision to reinstate the cancellation of the contract between Intels and the federal government is untrue and should be seen for what it is, mischief." The Nigerian Ports Authority had on Thursday, November the 30th, announced the reinstatement of Intels as the authority's service boat operation monitoring provider and the pilotage districts. And construction giant and contractor of the second Niger Bridge, Julius Berger, has formally handed over the bridge over the multi-billion naira project to the federal government. In a brief ceremony at the toll area of the bridge, the Minister of Works, Dave Mahi, said he's satisfied with this project, confirming that the contractor had carried out repairs on the vandalized portions of the road. He also says the bridge is open to concession to any private company who will be ready to complete all the roads, collect tolls, and then recoup their investment.
The job is impeccably very beautiful and well completed. We have the light issue, and we've put it together on how to permanently have light, especially at night. And what we have agreed is to deploy solar solution to that in the coming weeks, so that every night we don't have to run diesel, we have to run on solar. This project was supervised jointly by the NSIA and the Ministry of Works, and is under PIDF funding mechanism by the federal government. And the structures we are seeing are the structures for the tolling plaza. The road is going to be completed when we have completed the two interchanges. One is taking us off from the Asaba town, so that if you are coming to this bridge, you don't have to go through the Asaba town and encounter a lot of hold up. The other one, and this to be done by JB. The other one is to be done by RCC, which takes us up from here, avoid Onisha town, and it gets us to Bosi. And that is when this entire job will say to be completed. His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is very committed to completing this project so that tolling can start. However, if we get an investor who is prepared to fund the two interchanges, why not? We hand over the project for construction under our HDMI program to the such an investor.
The Enugu State Governor, Peter Mbah, has reassured potential investors in the country of his administration's readiness to provide an enabling environment for business and investments to thrive. The governor gave this assurance while declaring open the Enugu Investors Network inaugural meeting, where he unveiled the investment opportunities in various sectors of the state's economy.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as you heard,
the campaign to woo investors by the Peter Mbah-led administration continues with this Made in Enugu Investors Network to advance economic development, and in attendance are businessmen and state officials led by the governor. The state government believes a brainstorming session will evoke ideas to further create a suitable environment for ease of doing business.
You are the muscle and the brain behind the Southeast growth. By working together with government, this investor network is uniquely positioned to create meaningful action for real and positive economic change in Enugu State and the Southeast region.
Taking turns, the investors share their thoughts on what can attract investment to the state.
We are capitalists as a business people, and we want to see where we maximize return on investment. If you do the right thing and create the enabling environment, capital will come ordinarily.
Cost of registration title in Enugu State, you may need to look at that again and possibly grant some level of concession to attract more investors to come in now. Ultimately, the volumes will grow, and even when you charge a lower tax, you're going to extract more value from a higher base.
For others, it is not just economics, but entrepreneurship factor to create jobs for one's kinsmen.
We cannot make our place. What are we? So shameful that people have to preach to me to come and invest in my place? Why did God bless us? Was that a mistake? God blessed us for ourselves, for our mother, for our brothers and sisters. We can't create employment here to give employment to our brothers. Come on. Are we thinking all right? What's wrong with us?
While commending the interest of the potential investors, the governor says the government will ensure policies and strategies will benefit all businesses.
The good news is that you have Enugu State that is business facing, that is willing
to partner with you and to go the extra mile to ensure that we de-risk areas that you're going to ordinarily have challenges.
What is of interest to the average resident of Enugu State is how this roundtable will go beyond talk shop and translate to employment for the people and income-generating opportunity for investors.
The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, has assured that the 27.5 trillion naira 2024 budget presented by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to the National Assembly will mark the beginning of the transformation era in the country once it is passed by the lawmakers. The Information Minister says the proposed budget signifies pivotal steps towards realization of President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda by aligning fiscal strategies and priorities with broader national development objectives. He was speaking at the 2023 Annual Public Lecture of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Kaduna State Chapter.
DJ, if you're ready.
It is the 2023 Annual Public Lecture organized by the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, NIPR, Kaduna State Chapter. The theme of this year's lecture, Demographic Transition, Ethical Resource and Sustainable Development, Reflections on Northern Nigeria, interrogates the socio-political and economic realities of the region.
It is imperative we take ownership of the narrative to create a strong, future-proof society for our youthful population.
The lecture provides a platform for the Minister of Information and National Orientation to highlight the impact the 2024 budget will make on the nation's economy.
President Tinubu's administration recognizes the importance of economic stability. As the 2024 appropriation bill moves through the legislative process, we are very optimistic that its passage will mark the beginning of a transformative era, bringing tangible improvements to the lives of Nigerians. Before this week's budget presentation, President Tinubu had assented to an equally important supplementary budget, signed a number of landmark bills and executive orders into law, and inaugurated special presidential initiatives on fiscal policy reform, compressed natural gas, food security, MSME support, and other critical areas of the economy. The goal, of course, is to deliver relief to the Nigerian people and lay groundwork for true and lasting prosperity.
On the part of the former governor of Niger State, the gap between the passage and implementation of budgets in Nigeria requires urgent attention.
For the past 30 years, there was no 1 year that the budget would have passed into law that will achieve 60% of implementation of that. Then that should make us to ask the question. That should make us to tell our senators and the members of the House of Representatives, but again we have spoiled them. Till tomorrow nobody knows how much they are paid, excluding going to the parastatals and the ministries, excluding the padding of the budget, where they know what they put there. So it has become a symbiotic relationship now of the real corruption.
Participants at this lecture are united in a belief that there is a need for government agencies and institutions to be alive to their responsibilities of ensuring that annual budgets are fully implemented, in addition to continuing with projects that were started by previous administrations, since government is a continuous process.
In part two, after the break, Channels Television's data analyst Babajide Ogunsanwo joins us to discuss the proposed 2024 budget. Please stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 elections, Peter Obi, criticizes number of Nigeria's delegates to the UN climate conference in Dubai, describing it as a waste of resources, even as the federal government says it is not responsible for all the country's delegates. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar says he is not a beneficiary of the federal government's reinstatement of Integrated Logistics Services Nigeria Limited boat pilotage monitoring business, having sold his shares in the company since 2021. Julius Berger Construction Company formally hands over the second Niger Bridge to the federal government as Minister of Works says the bridge is open to concessioning. And one person is killed and 2 people injured after a knife and hammer attack on a street in central Paris. Budget of Renewed Hope. That is the name of the 2024 budget of the federal government of Nigeria. But so tonight, our focus is on how hopeful should Nigerians be. To share more insight about the 2024 budget is Babajide Ogunsanwo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst. Thank you very much, Babajide, for joining us on the News at 10 as always.
Good evening, Anne.
Good evening. Now, there have been different perspectives to the budget's presentation by the president, of course. What are the most important figures in this budget?
Before we look at the important figures, we could look at these important figures by looking at the present figures, looking at the present state of the budget, looking at where we're coming from the past, and then to look at the future. So to look at the present, we could look at it from the revenue and the expenditure side. And in simple terms for the common man, on respect to expenditure, the government is planning 27.5 trillion naira. And in simple terms, that budget comes to approximately 350 naira per day per Nigerian, which simply means that for the common man, you get an egg in the morning, an egg in the afternoon, and an egg at night. So this is the budget per Nigerian, looking at how the government wants to spend money. A simple perspective on that. Still on the present, Anne, we can look at it from the revenue side. The government is planning best case scenario next year, 18 trillion naira. But Anne, this is why this is important. 18 trillion naira represents approximately $24 billion. Now, I want you to keep that number in mind, $24 billion. That is what the government is expecting for revenue next year, best case scenario. But Anne, Tesla, that car company, their budget for next year revenue in excess of $100 billion. The federal government of Nigeria, $24 billion. And Microsoft, they are saying their revenue budget, when their board and MD met, the revenue budget for Microsoft next year in excess of $200 billion. And let me make myself clear. The federal government of Nigeria, the budget proposal of the president says it intends to earn a revenue of $24 billion for all of next year. Samsung, the phone-making company, Samsung Electronics, their revenue budget for next year in excess of $250 billion. And in simple terms, what the federal government of Nigeria intends to earn for all of next year is what Samsung says it will earn in 30 days. So that gives you a perspective of why some say this budget, in terms of revenue, is chicken change. And in terms of expenditure, is really just an egg in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the night for Nigerians. You know, my grandfather used to tell me, Jide, Nigeria is blessed, but Nigeria is a sleeping giant. If my grandfather was around today, the story will be changed. Nigeria is no longer a sleeping giant. Nigeria is now a snoring giant.
Wow.
That is the situation. And so, like you started, a budget of renewed hope. The challenge is, if we take a look into the namings of the previous budgets, Nigeria is already running out of names to call its budgets. We've called our budgets all sorts of things. If you take a look at our history, even in the last 8 years, we've come up with all sorts of names for the budget. Before budget of renewed hope, we've seen the 2016 budget of change. We've seen the budget of recovery and growth. 2019 budget of continuity. 2021 budget of economic recovery and resilience. Budget of economic growth and so the summary is we need to take a look at other things and focus on budgets that will have impacts, not just coming up with names that we call our budget, because already we are running out of names to call our budget. So what do you think will be the name of the 2025 budget? From what we've seen in history, we've used all possible names to describe our budgets, yet the impact is not really being felt.
Which brings me to my next question, talking about impact. The budget is 6 trillion naira, more than the 2023 budget. Does this guarantee economic growth or even development going forward?
Now, the answer to that question is to simply look at previous budgets and to look at how much previous budgets differed year on year, and then to look at the economic growth by the side. And if we take a look at the history, remember 2016, 6 trillion naira budget, which was 35% more than the 2015 budget. Economic growth in that year declined by 2%. Take a look at 2017, 7.4 trillion naira. That was 23% more than the 2016 budget. Yet, economic growth, 1%. Take a look at 2023, 21.8 trillion naira budget. That was 33% more than the budget of 2022. And despite a budget growth of 33%, the economy grew only by 3%. And so in statistical terms, when we look at how the budgets have been growing year on year, and the facts on how the economy has been growing, the correlation shows zero. There is no correlation between our historical budget growth and how the economy has been growing. And those are the facts. However, we still got some good news. If we take a look at the top 5 highlights of the president's speech, it still gives Nigerians some hope. Let's take a look at some of the things that made this speech memorable, despite the challenges that we've seen in our previous budgets. We've seen the president talk about constituting a foundation which will erect the future of this great nation, and he hopes that this budget will allow him lay the foundation to other budgets, which seems to be a positive move. We've also seen in the president's statement him also making reference to the current situation, saying that imagine we are attempting to draw water from a dry well. In simple terms, what the president is saying is the situation he met was worse than he expected. Same keeping into the president's budget statement, he says he's committed to meeting our debt obligations. In simple terms, the president is saying Nigeria will not default on its domestic and foreign loans, which will give hope and respite to borrowers and to the financial market. So whatever Nigeria owes, Nigeria has the capacity and will pay. The president also hopes that the economy will grow by a minimum of 3.76%. This is still far below his promises of double-digit economic growth. However, the president is saying that defense, security will still be his top priorities. And so that is the summary of the situation in terms of looking at it from the past and the present.
So you talked about defense, education, and health. Those sectors are getting the highest in terms of allocation this time. Do these sectors align with the president's promises?
Yes, they do. In that order, you've said it. Defense gets the highest allocation, followed by education, followed by health. But why does defense get the highest priority? And that's because everything is related to defense. Unfortunately, after the budget presentation, the Chief of Defense Staff General, Christopher Musa, has also come out to state clearly why this budget is different. And if we take a look at some of his remarks, what he is saying is that going forward, the Nigerian Armed Forces will also prioritize civil relations. So the Chief of Defense Staff is saying that, yes, peace is a necessity for education, but education is also a necessity for peace. In summary, what we're looking at is between the president and the service chiefs, we're going to be seeing an implementation of a collaboration with other sectors. So clearly what we're looking at in this budget is defense and education will strongly be collaborating. And yes, the president hopes to spend a lot more on healthcare, hospitals, and investing in new health projects. That is the situation we find ourselves today. However, Anne, in the final analysis, we need to take a look at the critical assumptions in this budget. And here are the challenges with regard to the critical assumptions. January to September this year, the federal government has spent 12.7 trillion naira. In simple terms, on an average this year, Average monthly expenditure this year, 1.4 trillion naira. The president is saying next year he intends to move from an average of 1.4 trillion naira per month to an average of 2.3 trillion naira per month. That seems highly optimistic. Debt service year to date, January to September, 5.7 trillion naira. The budget for next year, 8.25 trillion naira. That seems reasonable. Personnel and pension costs, January to September this year, 3.7 trillion naira. For next year, based on wage growth, the budget is 6.5 trillion naira approximately. That looks reasonable. Capital expenditure this year, Anne, we've spent only 1.4 trillion naira on capital expenditure. However, next year, the president is saying 8.7 trillion naira. Looking at our trends, that is highly optimistic. And finally, looking at our revenue. This year, the federal government of Nigeria has earned 8.6 trillion naira, an average of 960 billion naira per month. The president is saying next year he wants to move from an average of 960 billion naira per month to an average of 1.5 trillion naira per month. Based on the analysis and the trends, that is highly optimistic. And finally, we look at our loans assumptions from the budget year to date. We've borrowed 4 trillion naira. Next year, the budget is an additional borrowings of 7.8 trillion naira. And that is the summary of the budget. We've looked at it from the past, present, and the future. However, finally, Anne, again, remember what my grandfather told me. Nigeria was a sleeping giant. This fact shows we are now a snoring giant. And Anne, you do not wake a snoring giant with a tap.
Nah.
This budget is a tap based on the facts.
All right, so I think we need cold water to pour on this snoring giant.
A lot of cold water. Don't forget your budget is right here. An egg in the morning, an egg in the afternoon, and an egg at night.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Babajide Ogunsewo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, for your time. And always, this is your interesting contribution on the News at 10.
It's always my pleasure.
And still ahead on the News at 10. Imo State Police Command arrests 25 suspects linked to the killing of the police DPO and a police inspector at Ahiazum Bisay local government area of Imo State on November the 27th, 2023. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The National Association of Nigerian Students is appealing to the federal government to approve a national annual bursary of 200,000 naira to Nigerian students in order to cushion the economic challenges being faced by them. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the president-elect of the association, Mr. Lucky Nnomfe, says the association will closely monitor and scrutinize government policies to ensure the yearnings and aspirations of these students are adequately catered for.
Permit me to state the obvious that NANS, under my leadership, in as much as we will not be a rubber stamp to government decisions and policy, by the same token, we shall not be used by any individual or groups to advance or achieve their nefarious agenda against the state. We shall closely monitor, analyze, and scrutinize government policy as they relate to general well-being of students and greater welfare of Nigerian citizens before coming up with our position.
Of youth have taken to the streets in Jigawa State to protest against what they describe as injustice to the teachers' recruitment process. The youth, who identified themselves as J-Teach staff, gathered at various test centers designated by the State Universal Basic Education Board, expressing their frustration as they bear placards with different inscriptions. According to them, they have been serving under the J-Teach program as temporary teachers, and the government's plan to recruit teachers on a permanent basis has been marred with irregularities.
Youth in their numbers gather in various test centers, disrupting the teachers' recruitment process organized by the State Universal Basic Education Board in Jigawa State. Protesters bearing placards with different inscriptions claim to have served for 2 years as temporary staff under the J-Teach program.
We have did several exams. The recent one we have did a month back. The result is not yet released. So all JT's members here, as you can see, condemn this examination.
At the government house, the protesters were received by the chief of staff to the governor, who addressed them.
They are here on a demonstration because they are kicking against the decision of the SUBEB, State Universal Education Education Board, to conduct an assessment examination so as to verify the competence or otherwise of those that are participating in the JT's program. The head of the SUBEB is a professor of education, and he has his own innovation. But be that as it may, since those that are participating in the program are kicking against the idea of taking the exam, I don't know why, but they have adduced some reasons. I have collected their complaint, and I will forward it to His Excellency, the Executive Governor.
Their plea appears to have reached the governor as he vows to ensure a fair recruitment process.
The selection process, we want to make it transparent, and we'll make it fair and just. We have 4,500 JTs. And we are going to only take 3,000 as permanent. So, and the only way we can select the 3,000 to be fair to everybody is through examination. And based on the basis of that, you select the 3,000. The remaining 1,500 will continue to serve as JTs. And then, after some times, when the financial position of government improves, we still conduct another examination. Those that were able to pass, we put them into permanent and pension. This is a process we will continue to do. At the end of it, those we have realized they don't have capacity to teach, we have another alternative for them.
As the youth demand for an equitable recruitment process aimed at providing equal opportunities for all qualified persons, the state government reaffirms its commitment to a transparent process. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
The Rivers State government has signed a memorandum of understanding with 2 private companies to build 20,000 housing units for low and middle-class income earners in the state. At a brief signing ceremony at the government house, Governor Similaye Fubara explains how the project fits into his vision of not only consolidating, but also expanding on the achievements of the previous administration.
Let me assure our people, our government remains focused to the needs of our people. Within the confinement of our power, we will do everything to make sure that you're happy. I read somewhere in one of the great minds that developed Dubai, UAE. And he was asked the question, how do you define governance? He said, only when the people are happy. How do you assess when people are happy? When people can afford quality medical services with very meager amount, when people can attend good school and they can pay very meager amount, when people can compete with the world because they believe in the ideal of their country.
The harvesting and bagging of rice and maize by the National Agricultural Land Development Authority and its partners has started in Niger, Nasarawa, Benue, and Oyo states. The drive, according to the Executive Secretary of NALDA, Mr. Paul Ikone, is to boost the nation's food security. He also adds that the bumper harvest recorded in the crops is a result of its collaboration with private and public institutions across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country.
What you see is the harvesting, bagging and storing of rice and maize in Nasarawa State. The same is going on in parts of Niger, Benue and Oyo states. Few months ago, the National Agricultural Lands Development Authority cultivated the lands using a highly mechanized system, yielding this bumper harvest. This farm in Bauchi is equipped with 4 tractors, 2 maize threshers, planters, boom sprayers, maize harvesters, and a finished grain warehouse, all in a bid to boost food security.
This year, the whole farmland is 500 hectares. Because of the time constraint, we are only able to cover 50 hectares. We planted only 50 hectares because of the time constraint and the nature of the water. Because even after planting, we still had about 15 days without water, rainfall. So with this, we just say, let us just stop planting and concentrate on the 50 hectares we already planted, so that we'll have a very good harvest, instead of going more deeper without achieving our main goal.
In Benue State, harvesting and bagging are ongoing on the Nalda-cultivated 150-hectare rice farm in Boku. The plan is to help shore up rice production in the state.
We have a rice farm here of 150 hectares here in Batiambadi in Boku local government. We cultivate rice for 44 worth 150 hectares. Manual farming, of course, is good. It's economical, yes. It's not as expensive as mechanized, but you can do this quantity. You cannot do 150 hectares manually.
This effort is expected to give more boost to the federal government's plan towards food security.
From agriculture, let's talk security, this time in Imo State, where the police command has said it has arrested 25 suspects linked to the killing of a police DPO and a police inspector at Ahiazumbise local government area of Imo State on November the 27th, 2023. Parading the suspects at the command headquarters in Owerri, the Imo State capital, the Commissioner of Police, Danjuma Aboki, says the relentless efforts of the police and other security operatives in unraveling the killers of the police officers led to the invasion of IPOB ESN camp in Umuohie in Ngobala local government area of Imo State, where several terrorists were dislodged and several arms and ammunition were recovered.
In the course of investigation, there are 4 cases, a total number of 18 assault rifles, 5 AK-47 rifles, 6 pump actions, and total number of 359 rounds of ammunition, assaulted ammunition. From this source, we include 6 vehicles were recovered, motorcycle, charms, IPOB, ESN, ICNA, military camouflage, police, and other incriminating items were recovered from the criminals. Number 1, the lodgement of IPOB, ESN terrorist camp, recovery of arms and ammunition. Following the murder of the DPO of Aheze Mbese and an inspector of police on 27th of 11/2023 at Ihiara Junction in Aheazu Mbese by disclosable elements suspected to be member of prescribed indigenous people of Biafra and its armed militia security network, and the subsequent confession of suspect arrested at the scene by the operative of synergy with the military operative of the kidnapping unit. On 29th of last month, 2020, stormed the camp of criminal syndicate at Umuohie in Ngokpala local government of Imo State, dislodged the terrorists, recovered 2 automatic pump action rifles and 6 rounds of live cartridges.
To politics now, scores of youth and women groups from across the 3 senatorial districts of Kogi State are calling on the candidates who took part in the November 11 governorship election in the state to accept the result of that election. The women and youth who staged a peaceful protest in Lokoja, the state capital, say the state belongs to all indigenes and residents alike, irrespective of political, tribal, or religious leanings, and must be protected. They also add that nothing must be allowed to affect the peace of the state and the peace they have enjoyed for over 7 years under the administration of Governor Yahya Bello.
singing songs of solidarity. Youths and women groups marched through the major streets of Lokoja on a peaceful protest as part of efforts to register their displeasure over action of those who lost the recently held governorship election in Kogi State. Groups believe the governorship election remains the freest and fairest in the history of Kogi State, as they urge aggrieved parties who might still want to contest its outcome to go about it in line with laid-down guidelines instead of harassing the electoral umpire and the opposition.
This election is one of the best elections in Kogi State. So I wonder why some people will now say that INEC is being biased, that the security agents are being biased. So we are appealing to our brother to please embrace peace. We are appealing to him to take the result of this election in good faith and support the candidate that has emerged.
No one is above the law. Let the judges and the court do their work. Election is free and fair in Kogi State. We are here today to tell Nigeria that Kogi State has decided. We stand for the mandate of Alhaji Ahmed Usman Ododo for the development and the betterment of Kogi State.
Other protesters called on security agencies to rise up to the occasion and preserve the peace that is being enjoyed in the state.
We are all for Kogi State. Let's maintain peace. In election, there is winner, there is loser. Let us come together as one family, as one Kogite, to move Kogi State to a greater height. We are for peace. Tell the opponents, let them maintain peace, and let's move together to move Kogi State to a greater height. We voted Alhaji Usman Ododo. All women came out during the election. We support our Alhaji. He's the winner of APC.
Although the military prevented the groups from proceeding to the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission, they remain resolute in defending the mandate of Mr. Usman Ododo as the governor-elect of Kogi State.
And now to arts. The Dialogue is an exhibition of various works of art featured at this year's edition of ArtX in Lagos. The exhibition hosted works of art from various artists from around the world.
The ArtX Lagos continues to be a huge attraction, even in its 8th edition. The art community still looks forward to this annual convergence in Lagos.
The event is increasingly becoming a fixed item on the calendar of many art enthusiasts, especially those that have an interest in African art and also all forms of expression, because ArtX Lagos now seems to go beyond art.
The Dialogue is a theme for this year, as exhibitors from across the world feature exceptional works of art created by an array of artists.
We're showing 3 artists. So we're showing Nelson Makamo, who is a very prominent artist from South Africa. One of his works was actually featured on the cover of Time magazine in 2019. And then behind me we have pieces by Christopher Samuel Ido, who is a young, fast-rising Nigerian artist. And we're also showing these beautiful sculptures by a young artist, Ejiro Fenigal, which are looking at the beauty and, you know, the naturalness of African females.
Some of the galleries speak about what makes this fiesta unique.
It's a very important contemporary art fair because it's on the continent. So it's very important to have ArtX, it's very important to be here, it's very important for West Africa, it's very important for the representation of West Africa in the world.
The visitors are also captivated by the intriguing lineup.
I'm particularly impressed by the presentations. That every year you come, there's a new element. This year we've got a combination of what I will call contemporary art and modern applications of art in different forms, and the ArtX appears to have gone beyond art alone, and we have things like ArtX Cinema and various things on display.
For the team, the fair has been honoring African history and reshaping the contemporary art space by showing a blend of emerging talents and established intellectuals.
In the world of sports, the Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Mr. John Eno, has said the federal government has made progress in its effort to beat December the 8th deadline set by the World Anti-Doping Agency for the country's national anti-doping agency to comply with World Anti-Doping Code or face sanctions. Mr. Eno, who was a guest on Channel Sports Sunday, says that all issues raised by WADA are now being addressed. WADA in November accused NADO of not addressing several critical anti-doping requirements after an audit was carried out in October 2022.
We are making every effort that we can, making all the progress and working with the compliance committee of the World Anti-Doping Agency. You know, if you recall, it's about a week or so, 2 weeks ago, Nigeria was given, a deadline of 7th or 8th of December to show cause why it do not get delisted and suffer all the consequences of that delistment. I can report, in terms of the progress that has been made so far, that, and I thank the head of the civil service of the Federation, that I had to personally go to see her about a week ago. And before the end of that week, about 6 or 7 people were posted, to the National Anti-Doping Committee that is resident in the Ministry of Sports Development, which has also been one of the challenges. The challenge, one of them has been the fact that we don't have the right personnel, we don't have people who are manning that committee, and that we need to have them. Let me also say that we've also made progress in terms of trying to get the government, the funding challenge has also been part of it, and hoping, working as hard as we can. Even as I speak to you, the staff of that committee have been working through this weekend as they have done in previous weekends and trying to develop our case, just so that by about the 6th of December, we'll be able to see how much case we would have been able to put together and to convince the compliance committee.
Tottenham ended their losing run at the Etihad as a dramatic late header from Kulusevski also pointed and secured a point for a 3-3 draw at the Etihad earlier this evening. The point lifts Tottenham into 5th position and snaps a run of 3 consecutive defeats. Liverpool staged a sensational late comeback to beat Fulham 4-3 in a 7-goal thriller, while 10-man Chelsea shrugged off a red card for captain Connor to edge Brighton 3-2. West Ham drew 1-1 with Crystal Palace. Bournemouth and Aston Villa played 2-2. News Just In says a section of the premises of the Network Center of the Nigeria Television Authority in Sokoto State has been gutted by fire. The cause of the fire outbreak is not known yet, as management has not issued any official statement. Sources from the station say the fire gutted part of the old building and some of the infrastructure of StarTime's pay television facility in the station. Eyewitness account says the fire outbreak damaged other equipment but may not have been affected or may not have affected the transmission from the station. And outside our shores, a knife and hammer attack on a street in central Paris has left 1 person dead and 2 others injured. The attack, which occurred near the Eiffel Tower shortly before 9 p.m. local time on Saturday night, led to a death of the German national. And according to France's interior minister, the victim, born in 1999, was with his wife when he was attacked and fatally stabbed. In the meantime, French security officials say a 26-year-old French national known to security services has now been arrested, and anti-terrorism prosecutors have opened an investigation. And the main news again. Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 elections, Peter Obi, criticized the number of Nigeria's delegates to the UN climate conference in Dubai, describing it as a waste of resources. The federal government, however, says it is not responsible for all the country's delegates. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Have a wonderful week ahead. Good night.